Has Mojang gone crazy and is doing the unthinkable? They're working. Seriously, plural. There are new biomes, new blocks, new items, new structures. You can have a shared world with friends without needing a server. Abandoned camps. You want more. And the worst part is, there's more. What is the Sculpted? It came with a revolutionary mechanic in an area Mojang almost never touches. Physics. Toxic caves and a new mob with powers, plus autumn forest with specific mushrooms that can give you strange effects. Mojang. Anyway, seriously, it's been a long time since we've had such an ambitious series of updates in Minecraft. It's literally hundreds of new items like a mod pack, but official. If you haven't played Minecraft in a long time, you're going to be surprised. So get comfortable and come with me. The new update was released in June 2026 for Java version 26.2 and Bedrock 26.30. It already came with a surprising amount of new content, and the main highlight is the Sulfur Caves, a completely new underground biome that turns regular caves into an almost alien environment, full of sulfur, greenish fog, and some mechanics that I honestly didn't expect to see in Minecraft so soon. But of course, the new biome alone wouldn't be enough to support an entire update, and that's where the real star of this drop comes in. The Cube, made of sulfur, a mob that at first glance looks like a slime but hides one of the most creative mechanics Mojang has ever put in the game. Depending on which block it absorbs, it changes behavior, allowing for mini-games, transport systems, traps, and other creative uses the community is likely already inventing. For example, in these shorts, the player attaches to the new mob, rides a pig, and uses the boost to walk on water, possibly even faster than the elytra. Hold on, we'll get there, because there are literally hundreds of possibilities in a very creative update. In addition, the update also adds complete sets of Sulfur and Cinnabar blocks. For those who like building, there's a new geyser system that works almost like a natural elevator. There's also a brand new music disc called Bouncing, and a huge number of fixes and improvements, especially for players of the Bedrock version. But before talking about the Sulfur Cube and all the crazy things it can do, we need to get to know the place where all of this happens, the Sulfur Caves. This new underground biome is mainly made up of sulfur blocks and cinnabar, which are materials unique to this region, but they're far from being the only interesting thing around here. The biome also has sulfur spikes, which are crystalline formations scattered throughout the terrain, sulfur pools, which are toxic puddles found in various parts of the cave, and sulfur springs, which end up serving as a kind of clue for anyone trying to locate the biome from the overworld. And the most curious thing is that these caves don't appear just anywhere. They appear at approximately the same depth as lush caves and dripstone caves, but they tend to be smaller and much more fragmented. According to Mojang, they are more likely to appear under relatively flat terrain, especially in regions near deserts and swamps. But there's a much smarter way to look for this biome, and that's where the sulfur springs come in. These formations can appear on the surface of the world, and they work almost like a natural warning that there's something different right below. It's kind of like the X pirates use to mark treasure, and if you find one during your exploration, just start digging down. The chances of running into a sulfur cave go up a lot. And when you finally get there, the feeling is still strange. The water has a yellowish green color, white particles float around, and a green mist covers most of the cave, almost looking like a toxic themed mod pack. A radiological accident, just like the Cesium-137-1 in Goiânia. In the Bedrock version, this is clearer since the biome has an extra layer of exclusive fog, making the atmosphere heavier. And if you're using the vibrant visuals, that is, the game's own native shader, the situation becomes even more impressive. The lighting takes on a warmer tone, the fog becomes much denser, and the whole cave gives you that feeling that you've entered a place that definitely shouldn't exist. But all this atmosphere isn't just there to make the biome look better. The puddles scattered throughout the sulfur caves hide a new mechanic that can turn a simple walk into a big problem. Get close to these pools and you'll notice something different happening. At their base is a special block called potent sulfur, making these puddles one of the most dangerous parts of the sulfur caves. When this block is submerged, it starts releasing bubbles constantly, and along with them comes a kind of toxic gas, just like your ex-girlfriend, which rises to the surface and spreads through the environment as white particles. And any player or creature that comes into contact with this contaminated water, or even with the gas produced by it, gets the nausea effect. Yes, my friends, this is truly a radioactive mod pack, and your screen will start shaking right when you're exploring a cave full of holes, uneven ground, narrow passages, and hostile creatures scattered everywhere. However, the potent sulfur isn't just for causing nausea. Thankfully, actually, it's also responsible for one of the most creative mechanics in the entire update, allowing the creation of water columns capable of launching players, creatures, boats, and pretty much any other entity dozens of blocks high. And that's exactly where the geysers come in. Remember those cartoons like Woody Woodpecker with water fountains shooting from the ground? That's a hint at one of the most interesting mechanics Chaos Killscubed introduced to the game, all centered on potent sulfur. When this block is submerged in water and placed on top of a magma block, there's a chance for an eruption to happen, producing a water column that shoots upward, just like a real geyser. This opens up many possibilities for those who enjoy experimenting with new mechanics and for anyone tired of 35-minute tutorials just to build an elevator. And the most obvious application is to use geysers as natural elevators, since we're talking about a system capable of transporting entities vertically without requiring bubble columns or complicated mechanisms. And of course, the community will be able to find many other uses. It's easy to imagine racetracks using this new feature to launch boats along the course, arenas where players need to take advantage of the eruptions to reach elevated platforms, or even automatic systems to move creatures inside farms and complex constructions. Hey, Vinicius 13. And as interesting as this new feature is, the update still brings two complete sets of brand new blocks, and both have a very strong personality. The first one is Cinnabar, a red material found exclusively in sulfur caves. And when I say red, I'm not talking about that bright red we see in nether bricks or terracotta blocks. Cinnabar has a darker, more mineral look that fits perfectly with underground builds, ancient ruins, and structures aiming for a more industrial or archaeological appearance. And as usual, it already comes with practically all the variants that builders like to use, including slabs, stairs, walls, polished versions, bricks, and chiseled blocks for decoration. And on the other side, we have Sulfur, the yellow crystalline material that dominates much of the biome and will probably divide opinions. Some players will look at it and see one of the strangest blocks ever added to the game. Others will look at it and immediately start imagining dozens of different projects. And like Cinnabar, Sulfur also has slabs, stairs, walls, polished versions, bricks, and chiseled blocks. But the contrast between the intense yellow of Sulfur and the dark red of Cinnabar ends up creating a visual combination completely different from any other palette currently available. And there's still another important resource scattered throughout the biome: sulfur spikes. At first glance, they closely resemble speleothems or stalactites from regular caves, since they can appear both on the floor and the ceiling and have that pointed shape that any player immediately recognizes. The difference is that they don't work exactly the same way. Unlike the stalactite, the sulfur spike doesn't increase fall damage, doesn't collect water or lava, and doesn't produce those drops we're used to seeing in dripstone caves. On the other hand, they have a very interesting advantage. Sulfur spikes can grow naturally from sulfur blocks and can also be farmed by the player, turning the material into a renewable resource. This is especially important because that's not the case with Cinnabar, so anyone who plans to use large amounts of sulfur ends up getting a consistent way to produce more material without relying solely on exploration. And even though all of this already makes the biome quite interesting, the truth is that none of these blocks is the main reason why so many people are talking about what Skibid is. Because in this update, there's a creature living in the sulfur caves that can turn practically any Minecraft block into a completely different ability. This is exactly where we finally get to the star of this entire update, without a doubt, the sulfur cube. At first, it looks like a weird version of a slime, as if someone had dumped too many chemicals into a swamp and decided to watch the result. But just spend a few minutes watching it and you'll realize that this creature is in a completely different category from any other mob Mojang has ever created. The sulfur cube appears exclusively inside sulfur caves, and unlike regular slimes, it is completely peaceful. You can get close to it without any worries and even pick up the little buddy using a bucket, just like we do with fish or axolotls. And another interesting feature appears when it dies. Just like slimes, it splits into smaller versions. The difference is that these small cubes don't stay that way forever. They can grow again over time and return to their original size. And if you don't have the patience to wait, you can just feed these little guys slime balls to speed up the process. The big difference with the sulfur cube is its ability to absorb blocks. It can do this on its own by finding certain blocks lying on the ground, but the player can also simply pick up a block and use it directly on the mob to force absorption. And this is when things start to get really weird. As soon as it absorbs a block, the sulfur cube pretty much abandons its normal behavior. It stops acting like a regular mob, stops moving on its own, and starts functioning almost like a physical object placed in the world, which ends up making it immune to damage. Depending on the block it absorbs, it gains different properties. This is the moment when players are doing all sorts of experiments, just like in Breaking Bad. Calm down, not making blue crystal labs, but maybe making a pool table, thanks to how easily these mobs can slide. And if you want to change your mind, you can remove the absorbed block using shears or simply replace it with another one. And believe me, up to this point, the Sulfur Cube by itself already seems like an extremely interesting idea, but the nerdier you are, the more absurd the situation gets. Because by studying deeply, each block in Minecraft can result in small different nuances. A grass block, for example, is the most balanced version of all, with average speed, average kick, and average friction. But just use a log block and it turns into a kind of giant rubber ball, moving much faster and traveling much farther. And a muscle block makes it still extremely fast, but it barely bounces, while blue ice turns the Sulfur Cube practically into a hockey puck. Soul sand or soul soil, on the other hand, results in an extremely heavy cube, hard to move and much more resistant to impacts. And finally, I think you already get it, but now imagine being nerdy enough, having enough free time, not having a 9 to 5, or just being on vacation to test the more than 1,000 blocks that exist in the game. Iron block, honey block, magma block, all of them have a different function that ranges from causing damage to sticking to surfaces, and even TNT itself, which can literally explode in a few seconds. Minecraft Oppenheimer update. Now we have atomic bombs inside the game. In this case, the Sulfur Cube wasn't created just to be another mob in the game, but a real walking toolbox that literally has hundreds of possibilities, and with each new snapshot, depending on the community, it can get a different function for each new block. I'm really excited to see if it will be used in transportation, minigames, traps, redstone mechanisms, defense systems, or simply to cause absolute chaos on your friend's server. And even after all that, as always, there are still some smaller additions that help complete the package. One of them is the Sulfur Cube bucket, an item that allows you to capture and transport the mob in the same way we do with fish and axolotls. In addition, the Sulfur Caves also hide a new music disc called Bouncing. It can be found in chests in abandoned mines and was composed by an artist named Fingerspeech. And before we talk about the snapshot that came out right after and brought even more revolutionary things, it's worth mentioning a recent change that went unnoticed, but that could completely change the way we've been playing Minecraft for years. For as long as anyone can remember, anyone who wanted to play with a friend over the internet basically had 4 options: create a server, join a server, subscribe to helmets, or use mods and third-party programs. Who here has never used Hamashi and Hadmin? Recently, new options have appeared, like the Essentials Modrington. That's how Java Edition has always worked, and everyone envied the simpler Bedrock edition. In May, Mojang decided to change that. In Snapshot 26.2 and Snapshot 7, just before the Chaos Cubed update, they introduced 2 new features. The first was the Friends list, which finally brought a native system to add friends, see who's online, and keep track of who's playing. And the second new feature was much more ambitious, a peer-to-peer multiplayer system. For those who don't know, the idea is simple in practice. Instead of creating a server, you just had to open your own world and invite a friend. The game would handle all the connection automatically, like in many modern games, without needing external programs or mods. You close the world, the session ended, and that was it. No server setup, open ports, or need for helmets. However, during Snapshot 26.2 testing, Mojang changed their mind. According to them, the experience still hadn't reached the level of quality they wanted to deliver to players. The result was that the peer-to-peer system ended up being removed even before the stable version was released, and that's where we are now. The good news is that the friends list remained and is now part of the Java edition. As for peer-to-peer multiplayer, it's still in development, and at least for now, there's no date for its return. That's definitely one of the best things for real players, and I hope Mojang does us this favor and doesn't just stick with helmets for profit. But while that's not happening yet, Mojang is already starting testing for the 3rd game drop of 2026 with the arrival of 26.3 Snapshot 1, and this time the focus changes completely. Instead of new physics mechanics, the update focuses on exploration, building, and especially on one of the themes the community has been asking for years, a biome inspired by autumn. The main new feature is the parched forest. Visually, it's quite different from what we're used to because it replaces that sea of green leaves with trees in shades of red, orange, and yellow, creating a landscape that really resembles real-world autumn forests. According to Mojang, this biome usually appears near cold biomes, serving as a kind of transition between them. For the first time in a long while, Minecraft is getting a completely new type of tree called poplar. It has its own trunk, wood and leaves, as well as a shape that's quite different from traditional trees, with a more rounded canopy that makes it stand out right away. Each poplar can grow with red, orange or yellow leaves, and each of these variants also produces falling leaf particles in the same color, making the biome feel much more alive during exploration. And as has become tradition in the most recent updates, this new wood isn't just for decorating the map. Poplar logs can be turned into a complete set of building blocks, including wood variants that players are already used to using in their constructions. The new biome's features go beyond trees. Its character also comes from the plants and structures found throughout the environment. First, it's worth mentioning the red bushes, which naturally appear in groups and can even be multiplied with bone meal. Instead of growing upwards, they spread across the surrounding blocks, working similarly to other short plants in the game. And without a doubt, one of the most curious blocks in this snapshot is the shelf mushroom. As the name suggests, it's a mushroom that grows attached to the sides of poplar trees. It exists in two versions, a small one and a large one. If you use bone meal on the smaller one, it grows immediately, and when the large version is broken, it drops 2 mushrooms, making collection much easier. And it's not just for decoration or for making stew. Mojang decided to give this block its own unique mechanic. When any entity steps on it, a small bounce effect happens, very similar to what happens with beds. It doesn't launch the player far, but it's enough to create more dynamic paths, small parkour challenges, or simply add a bit more personality to the biome. And the biggest new feature for exploration is the abandoned camps, a brand new structure that can now appear in various biomes of the overworld. The idea, just like several other structures already present in the game, is that these constructions represent old camps that were left behind. So you find torn tents, extinguished campfires, barrels, chests, and several small annexes scattered throughout the area. They don't always follow the same layout, and each camp adapts to the biome where it was generated. That's why it's common to find tents partially destroyed by trees covered in spider webs or with other details that make it seem like the place was really abandoned a long time ago. And interestingly, it was precisely because of this structure that Mojang took the opportunity to fulfill an old community request. For the first time, all wool colors got their own stairs and slabs. It may seem like a small change at first, but it really increases the variety of blocks available for building, especially for those who like to create more elaborate details. And these new variants also continue to maintain the main characteristic of wool, which is dampening the vibrations detected by skulk sensors and the warden. In other words, besides expanding the possibilities for builders, they still have a practical use within the gameplay. And now, another interesting detail about this update is that, for the first time in Minecraft history, cave spiders can naturally spawn without depending on mob spawners. Until now, they were pretty much restricted to abandoned mineshafts and have always been quite inconvenient, by the way. But now, they can also appear inside sulfur caves, which makes exploring the biome a bit more dangerous and a bit more unpleasant as well. And like almost every modern Minecraft update, Chaos Cubed also brought a series of specific improvements for the Bedrock version. These improvements range from interface quality, like the addition of automatic search systems inside the inventory, to small changes such as the speed of skeleton shots, which is now much closer to the Java version and can vary according to the difficulty level selected by the player. In the end, the fight against the Ender Dragon got an upgrade in atmosphere. During the battle, a space fog covers the arena and helps make the fight more dramatic. But now, a very welcome fix that arrived 10 years late is the problem that haunted all players of Core Wars, Bad Wars, and minigames. In some situations, an Ender Pearl could teleport the player inside solid blocks, causing suffocation or even instant death. Everyone who played multiplayer in Core Wars or Bad Wars has suffered from this, and finally, 10 years later, this behavior has been fixed. When someone asks you what laziness is, show them a picture of Mojang. In the end, Chaos Cubed is an update that focuses much more on creativity than on quantity. And I know there's a lot of talk about an end update, a complete overhaul of the dimension, with new challenges, new biomes, and lots of epic things we've already seen. For example, Minecraft Dungeons has different Endermen and blocks, which would give the game a fresh look. But since Mojang is going in a different direction, why not go back to talking about one of my favorite updates, the sex update? Wait, I misread that. If you watched this far, I must have entertained you. Subscribe, like, and follow me on Instagram at emain77.